Welcome to the final video in my complete bow building series. If you've made it this far, great work. Seriously, it is a lot of work to get to this point, especially if you're just getting into this stuff as a beginner at home with YouTube as your only real source of guidance. Your bow is pretty much ready to go. To call it good at this point, you'd be fine. There are a couple of last little things I like to do, just almost you could call them housekeeping items on your bow that just kind of give it that finishing touch and make it as good as it possibly can be. So I'm gonna go over a couple of things with you about that today, and then you are done. So I wanna talk about your string stopper here. This is super easy to adjust, but you do want to adjust it to make sure it's in the optimal position. So they're pretty much all the same. You're gonna have a bolt somewhere around here, usually on the right side, which is going to loosen off your stopper. This one is super tight, but they're not always going to be this tight. What you're going to want to do is get this so that it is just barely making clean contact with your string. You don't want it to be pressing on the string, and you don't want there to be a gap. You want it to be just touching it, just making contact. And that's going to help both with silencing as well as with accuracy, because this will help stop your string at a very consistent point. So that's all you have to do to set that. Tighten this bolt up, and you probably will never have to look at this again until you decide to change strings. Another thing that I like to add onto my bows, and yours might come with something to this effect, is some sort of rubber silencer or rubber dampener on the cables. So when I do strings, I like to put on the rubber string weights as opposed to brass. I used to do brass, but the rubber are honestly easier to put on, and they do have a dampening effect. And then I like to put on just a couple of these like wishbone style dampeners on your cables. They're really easy to install. It literally takes, you know, a minute each or less. And I do think they make a difference in the noise, and they don't look bad at all in your bow. So that's just one little thing I like to add on. If you decide you want to add like a rear bar stabilizer or something, you can absolutely do that too. I don't do that simply because I find them really annoying to try to carry through the bush. And when I strap my bow onto my pack, it's really annoying to have kind of a third dimensional piece coming off the bow. So I use this bee stinger stabilizer. Has been a beast for me. I love it. I like the length, because when I go to put my bow down on the ground, when I'm glassing or really doing anything, it's long enough that I can rest my bow on the top limb pocket and the stabilizer, and my sight is well out of the way. So that's a very safe way to lay your bow down in the field. Just lean it up against your leg when you're glassing or whatever. I like to have it set up in this way for protection of my sight particularly. The other thing I like to have is I like to have a bow mounted quiver. Now I like to have one with a quick release that I can pop off really quickly before a shot, because I will never shoot with this on. When you have 5 arrows in here, 4 arrows in here, and you're trying to shoot, first of all, it totally throws you off balance, which I really don't like. And second of all, that's a massive amount of surface area with the vanes and the shafts and the hood to be hit by wind and crosswind. So that is just gonna move you around. It is so easy to just quickly drop this. I've never been in a hunting scenario where I couldn't drop my quiver, so I love that quick release. But then I also like the bow mounted quiver, because when I'm going to the stand or leaving the truck or whatever, it's just one less thing to grab. I have my bow, it has my arrows, my release will be attached to it, and I'm good to go. So that covers it, guys. Thank you for joining me through the whole process, or if you just skipped along and took the information you needed, I'm happy to provide it. I'm glad and hope you enjoyed it. This series was a ton of fun to do, and I am so excited to go sight in my bow.